Before Argentina had a name, this land already had hunters, sacred caves, stone cities, and roads through the Andes. Long before the Spanish arrived, long before anyone called this land Argentina, there were people here who left their hands pressed against stone, who built cities into the sides of mountains, who walked roads carved through the sky, and most of their stories were never told. Deep in an Argentine Patagonia, in a remote canyon carved by the Rio Pinturas, there is a place that takes hours to reach on foot. No road leads there. No city stands anywhere near it. And on the walls of this canyon, someone, thousands of years ago, left a message. Hundreds of handprints stenciled onto stone. Red, white, yellow, black, as if the people who made them were saying, "We were here." These are the Cueva de las Manos, the Cave of Hands. According to UNESCO, the art here was created roughly between 13,000 and 9,500 years before present. Let that sink in. 13,000 years ago. That is older than the pyramids, older than writing, older than almost every story humans have ever told. The people who made these handprints were Ice Age hunters. They followed herds of guanaco, the wild ancestors of the llama, across this frozen landscape. They survived in a world we can barely imagine. And then they stopped here, in this canyon, and left their hands. But here is the mystery. Most of the prints are left hands. Why? Britannica confirms. Their purpose is not known with certainty. Were they holding a pipe in their right hand, blowing pigment onto the stone? A ritual tool? A weapon? Were these marks of passage? I was here? A greeting to those who would come after? A warning? Nobody knows. What we do know is this. These hands have been touching this canyon wall for 13,000 years, and they are still here. The people who left these marks were the ancestors of the Tehuelche, the native people of Patagonia. Their stories were never written down. They had no alphabet, no monuments, no cities. What they had was this canyon, and the hands they left on its walls. Think about that for a moment. No empire, no army, no gold, just hands on stone. And 13,000 years later, we are still looking at them, still asking the same questions they must have asked themselves. Who are we? Why are we here? But further north, in another time, under another sky, a very different people were building something else, something that would refuse to disappear. In the high valleys of northwestern Argentina, in a province called Tucumán, the land is dry. The mountains are sharp. The sky is enormous. This is the Calchaquí Valley, and here, hundreds of years before any European arrived, an entire civilization rose from the stone. They built cities into the mountainsides. They engineered irrigation systems that turned desert into farmland. They created a world for themselves, far from any empire, far from any ocean, far from any place you have heard of. At its peak, Quilmes was home to around 5,000 people. Their houses were built from stone and cactus wood, terraced into the hillside, each level connected by paths and stairways. A city that grew not outward, but upward, into the mountain itself. They developed sophisticated irrigation, canals that carried water from the mountains, reservoirs that stored it through the dry season. In a place that looks like a desert, they built a world that could feed thousands. And nearby, at a site called Tastila, archaeologists found something even bigger. Tastila is the largest pre-Hispanic settlement ever discovered in Argentina. 12 hectares, around 2,000 inhabitants. It thrived around the year 1300. But here is the question that still haunts archaeologists. Why was Tastila abandoned before the Spanish ever arrived? Something happened. A drought? A conflict? A shift in belief? Nobody knows for certain. The city simply emptied. Its people vanished into the mountains. Their stone houses, their irrigation channels, their plazas, all left behind, waiting. But the Quilmes people did not vanish. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, the Calchaquí region became the site of one of the longest indigenous resistances in South American history. For decades, through the 16th and 17th centuries, the people of Quilmes and their neighbors fought back. They knew these mountains. The Spanish did not. From the valleys to the high passes, they waged a guerrilla war. Ambush, retreat, disappear into stone. They refused to submit. For a long time, they won, but not forever. In 1667, Spanish forces finally broke through. The Quilmes nation fell, and what followed was not just defeat, it was erasure. The Spanish forced around 1,700 survivors to march 1,200 kilometers on foot from their mountain homeland to Buenos Aires. Men, women, children, across deserts, across rivers, across a continent that was no longer theirs. Many did not survive the journey. Their descendants were scattered, assimilated, and their identity was nearly erased from the official story, but not completely. Today, the city of Quilmes, a suburb of Buenos Aires, 1,200 kilometers from their homeland, carries their name, a name given not by them, but to them, a ghost of what was lost. The ruins still stand in the Calchaquí Valley. The terraces, the canals, the silence, and slowly, very slowly, their full story is being brought back into the light. While the Calchaquí people were building their stone cities, another civilization was expanding from the north. The Inca, the largest empire in pre-Columbian America, stretching from present-day Colombia down through Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and into Argentina. This, right here, was the southern frontier, the edge of their world. To control this vast territory, the Inca built something extraordinary, a road system known as Qhapaq. According to UNESCO, it extended roughly 30,000 kilometers through jungles, across deserts, and over mountain passes higher than 4,000 meters. Think about that. A road network built by hand at altitudes where most people can barely breathe. In Argentina, the Inca Road reached as far south as present-day Mendoza. At the foot of Aconcagua, the highest mountain outside of Asia, the Inca built way stations, fortresses, shrines to the sun. They brought their language, their gods, their architecture, but this was the limit. Why did the Inca stop here? Because even at the southern edge of the Inca world, this land was never simple to control. The terrain was brutal, the distances were vast, and the people who already lived here the same people who would later resist the Spanish, were not easily conquered. The greatest empire in the Americas met its match, not in a great battle, not in another empire, but in stone, in distance, in a land that simply refused to be tamed. Three civilizations, three worlds, one land, the Ice Age hunters who pressed their hands against canyon walls and left a message that would outlast every empire. The stone cities of the Calchaquí, built into mountains, defended for generations, nearly erased from memory. And the Inca, the mightiest power in the Americas, who reached this far south and could go no further. This was Argentina before Argentina, before the name, before the maps, before anyone drew a border on this land. It was already a world. Argentina is more than Buenos Aires, more than tango, more than the stories you have already heard. It is a land where hands from the Ice Age still touch stone, where cities refuse to die, where even the greatest empire of South America had to stop and turn back. These stories were almost lost, but they are still here, in the canyons, in the ruins, in the silence of the mountains, and now they are also with you. Which of these lost worlds surprised you the most? The Ice Age hunters of Patagonia, the stone cities of the Calchaquí, or the Inca frontier? Let me know in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, share it. Until next time.